Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good morning and Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Mr. Professor Shiraz, for inviting me today here. I also wish to acknowledge at the outset the contribution your illustrious father made to the country and to the education sector in particular, Mr. Talib Kareem. I'm sure he'll be remembered through your efforts and the efforts of your faculty and the college, the university that is run. Ladies and gentlemen, the subject at hand, first and foremost. I know the clock is ticking against me, but I shall try and finish it at least a minute earlier than the assigned time, because that would be the target, then only then I would be able to achieve it. Leadership, I think, is one concept that is highly romanticized by both the dramatists and the historians. It has always been a subject of great interest. Each and every single individual on planet Earth, regardless of his position in life, is very concerned about leadership and about being a leader. So does leadership resign itself to single individuals, or does it spread out to the multitude? It's a question that management scientists have been debating for years and decades on, with no possible conclusive aspect to it. Consequently, I would like to begin off by, I have a presentation, if I can have that. I have a presentation, but my whole idea in keeping the presentation is to see that I don't digress very much, but then I've also got a tendency to make sure that I overstep my presentation in terms of not being bound and confined and imprisoned by my own thoughts. I would rather speak from my heart rather than be constricted by a presentation. Leadership, ladies and gentlemen, I personally think I was born in the lap of a leader. Leadership does not require, in my personal estimation, of a little understanding that I've tried to develop over the subject, is not as a consequence of receiving a badge, an honor, a title, a crown, or even a relationship. And in the context of our country, relationships are very important. I think all of us look at our North Star in life, i.e. our parents, who are the best leaders to look at, because they are managing from day one when you open your eyes into their laps and you realize that they're making everything possible to make your life better. So the role of a leader is to make the lives of others better. All parents wish to give to their children a better opportunity than they received. And any parent who does not deliver that ceases to be a parent. So what is the basic element of leadership, ladies and gentlemen? The basic element which we have consigned to the dustbin of our memories is sacrifice. There is no leadership without sacrifice. It is only men and women in history who have learned the art of sacrificing that have, bolstered them into positions of leadership. And may I recount a few? You have a few names appearing on the screen here. The founder of our country, Mr. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Quaid-e-Azam. What kind of sacrifices did he make in his personal life and his professional life? What kind of leadership he provided to the Muslims of United India? If you were to look at it, you would find that the classic description or the epitaph on his life would be one of sacrifice. And he was a man with equal amount of blood running in his veins. He was no angel. He was a human being at the end of the day, and therefore was possessive of all the emotions and passions that are present in you and me. Consequently, just imagine somebody who has led a life of being a bachelor till the age of 40 decides to get married to a young girl of 16, 17 years old who turned 18 on the first day after crossing the benchmark of the 18th year. She married Mr. Jinnah. And what did he do with his married life? He wanted to dedicate himself to the cause of the Muslims of India. He did not let his marriage interfere in his objective. And he paid a great personal sacrifice in terms of his personal life, which was ridden with loneliness, which was ridden with the fact that he couldn't share many of the things. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru is on record to have said that if only I knew Jinnah was suffering from tuberculosis, I would have delayed the independence of India through Lord Mountbatten by a good 3 years. That's the quality of leadership that we have. There are many people amongst us, including my own self, who always relate to the fact and say that at 70, for example, that we celebrated 2 days back, I thought it was a great and a classic example of celebration because it was so full of enthusiasm, but it was also riddled with indiscipline. I'm sure you would agree with me that discipline is a necessary aspect of leadership. So you can be at 70 young and energetic, or you can be absolutely senile at 70. Where are we? Are we young and energetic, or we have turned senile? It's a question that we must repeatedly ask ourselves, because at the end of the day, it is the people of the country who are going to make what the country is. Now, the tagline that we have here is great leaders, global business, and great Pakistan. The conversation I had with Professor Shiraz was a little different. Not very different, but fell in line with what is stated here. It just said, better leaders, better business, better Pakistan. I'll try and see if I can relate to both the aspects. Mr. Talib Karim, you referred to ethical leadership. Now, is that a consonance of leadership? Should always be there? Or you can have unethical leaders and still be having followers? Unfortunately, if you look at the political history of various countries, you would find that there have been unethical leaders who also had limited followership. But they do not gain eminence, ladies and gentlemen. Eminence is only deserved by those who know how to uphold the values of morality, moral integrity, financial integrity, and ethical integrity. You and I have been making excuses in conversations that Pakistan is relatively a young and a new country. 70 years is what in the life of a nation. We shall also develop to be a great nation. Pardon my saying so. No. If Europe took 400 years to arrive at where it is today, we don't need those 400 years. By and large, the population of this country subscribes to a particular faith. And that faith had enunciated 1400 years back the principles of civility, the principles of behavior, the principles of interaction, the principle of leadership. We don't need 400 years to be where we ought to be. We already have it. It's just mere revisitation to the manual that we all possess, which is called the coding of life. We need to revert back to fundamentals. It is only through fundamentals that we'll be able to create the right kind of leadership. I mean, it's easy for me to quote people from history like Nelson Mandela, Pope Francis, or the others of the like and type. But what about our own selves? We have had great ethical leaders in our own society, in our own subcontinent, in our own country. Mr. Jinnah, when he was not leading his political fight, this is in a period of anywhere between 1916 to 1918, when he was a practicing lawyer in Bombay Presidency, and to a particular Hindu client of his, he won the case, and he fought beautifully, argued the case exceedingly well in the courts. A predetermined fee was decided with the client. The client got so happy at winning the case that he brought another check. and gave it to Mr. Jinnah. And this is meant for the great work you have done in getting me the decision in my favor. Mr. Jinnah returned the check and said the fee was predetermined. I delivered what I was asked to deliver. I need not be rewarded more than what I deserve to be given. And he returned the check back. First lessons in ethical leadership, moral leadership. I'll try and confine myself as much as possible to the founder of this nation because I think he set the best standards of leadership. This is the second or the third cabinet meeting taking place in Karachi, and at that time, cabinet was not 50 members. Cabinet was just 8 people. And while the meeting was in progress, Mr. Jinnah's secretary popped into the room, bent down and whispered something into Qaid's ears. Qaid looked at him with a rather strange look and a look of anger in his eyes. And then he addressed the audience, i.e. the 8 ministers that he had, and he said, look here, I think all my colleagues in the cabinet have come straight from their residences, and I'm sure at their residences they would have had breakfast, in which their better halves would have served them tea. So at this cabinet meeting, no tea shall be served. Pakistan is a new and a poor country. I can't afford to have tea served to my cabinet at every cabinet meeting. And until he was alive, ladies and gentlemen, no tea was ever served. I leave you to imagine what happens today at the various government houses that we have. And you're all fully aware of what allocation the budget does to run those places. We have astrayed, we have relegated ourselves somewhere down the line in the last 70 years. Maybe we need to revisit that. Okay, a quick look at this slide and then I would move on. Okay, I'm talking about the position achieved, I'm talking about the charisma, I'm talking about the moral example, I'm talking about the power held and intellectual leadership and ability to accomplish. Now the clock, I think there's something wrong with the clock. It's moving faster than it should. These are the leaders, ladies and gentlemen, who have, by an act of either moral example or by mere charisma or by mere intellect, been able to lead their countries and have led them to great opportunities and have created great nations. Mother Teresa was a social leader. She needed no recognition, but she served the community. She delivered to the community. We had our own version of Dr. Ruth, who passed away a couple of days back, who also was a social leader. Mr. Abdul Sattar Idi, a great social leader in his own right. So leadership does not require a position, does not require an elective position. Leadership can happen at any stage in life, and you can be a leader at any point in time. I have been lamenting at various forums that the major issue with this country beloved country of ours is that we have 180 million leaders. We don't have followers. That's our issue. You look at China, you look at Japan, you look at Korea, you look at Taiwan, you look at Thailand, you look at Malaysia. What do they have? They have great followership. Mao Zedong was a ruthless leader. Zhou Enlai was the architect of China. Avoided center stage always. Let all the sun shine on Mao Zedong, not on himself. But he executed the plans of Mao Zedong in terms of social equality. China would not be today what it is if it was not for these two people who ruled with an iron hand. And so did Mahathir follow the same example. So did Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore follow the same example. Great standards of personal behavior. That's terrible. Can you stop that? Because I still need to... Only if Professor Shiraz, wherever he is, would permit me to take 5 more minutes, and if the audience would be kind enough to bear with me, Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. You see, the discussion that we were having about better, now when we look at the contextualization on the basis of grammar, you have to be good first to be better, and then you become best. So the presumption here in our minds is that we are already good. Now I leave it to you to judge whether we are or we are on stage one. We need to find that out through our own analysis of where do we stand in terms of governance, where do we stand in terms of business governance. At the end of the day, it's the governance that will improve the cost of doing business in Pakistan. It's only when you reduce your cost of doing business in Pakistan when you become competitive in the world markets. And if you can't be competitive in the world markets, you will be misled. We have seen what has happened to our export industry. We have seen what's happened to our textile industry. See, it was an ideal time 3 years back with GSP available, the generalized system of preferences, and then China vacating the lower end of the value chain on the textile sector. That was when Pakistan must have moved dramatically and occupied that space. We failed as a nation. And who took precedence? Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Bangladesh, that does not grow a single staple of cotton in its lands, has become a major textile exporter. So somewhere we have, ladies and gentlemen, gone wrong about it. We need to look at it. That's the nation, sitting with a closed mind, unwilling to open itself to ideas, unwilling to change. The most important thing that we wish to do is to change. The change that I wish in others is a change I need to bring about in myself first. The demand on others should be less, the demand on self should be far greater. That is what sacrifice that I started off by saying and remarking, that is the quotient of leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, on a lighter note, Churchill was considered one of the finest leaders, and since I heard the anchor person here, and I think also Professor Shiraz made a mention about whether leaders are born or leaders are made, Churchill remarked about a 19th century Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Lord Rosebery. He said he's a man, and this was to ridicule him rather than praise him, by the way. He said, the Prime Minister lives in a time of great men but small events. Churchill was a wartime leader. Take away the Second World War, and I don't know what would become of Churchill, except that he would be a great entertainer on the House of the Parliament, because he had a great sense of wit. And should people have wit as political leadership? Yes. Mr. Jinnah was once asked by a correspondent who was not very friendly for the Muslim League, that's the way I criticize people, keep it soft and positive, who was not very well inclined towards Muslim League, asked Mr. Jinnah that look at Mr. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, he always travels by a third-class compartment on the trains, and you always book a coupe for yourself, a first-class coupe. That's the major difference between your style of leadership and Gandhi's style of leadership. Mr. Jinnah, who had a great sense of wit, but all within the norms of decency, ladies and gentlemen, and a lot of grace, he said and he remarked, Gandhi lives on the arms of the Congress Party funds. I am a lawyer who earns through sheer dint of hard work. I spend my money the way I earn. Gandhi lives on other people's money, not me. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to request that we unlock our potential, unlock in terms of, guiding the youth of this country, particularly those who are below the age of 45. All the politicians talk about this great power of the youth of Pakistan, but that youth of Pakistan, ladies and gentlemen, wasn't born last night. They were at least born 30 years back. What have the economic managers done to prepare them for the challenges of the current day and world? Time for us to ponder about it, time for us to make corrective action through demonstration of leadership traits in ourselves, beginning with morally upright, financially upright, and ethically upright. Thank you very much. Very kind of you. God bless you all.
May I please request Mr. Talibas Kareem and Mr. Shiraz to come and present the memento to Mr. Aziz?